whenever we are writing a protocol or we are writing a specific methodology or broadcast, we need to be aware of all this to see how we navigate that, right? Because every time we are going to make decisions, and the idea here is not that you are fully compliant with everything, but that you can make informed decisions. And this is what the market is requesting. I believe I can do this and this. Maybe I don't agree with this, and so these principles I am not agreeing with. And you are cognizant of those principles existing and then being demanded by some pieces of the market, and you are making the decision. So it was kind of a compilation of information that I wanted to put into some table that we could be all able to filter according to the sources, according to the topic. Like if we want to look into data around additionality, okay, what is the market demanding on additionality, and we focus on that, and we can keep further filtering by several things. So let me share my screen. Yes. We are sending this through LinkedIn and other areas. This is the table. Do you all see it? Okay, so yes? This is the table. It has an initial summary of the category that you might be interested in, and each of these categories corresponds to one tab. So you have the governance tab, the no double counting or no double issuance, the tracking, the third-party verification, the risk management, the additionality, the transparency, the robust quantification. And let's say we are interested in looking into, I don't know, robust quantification, right? So you get into that and you will see, you can filter by source. So we have, for instance, the ICROA principles. There are a couple principles from Pachama and Abaitable, which are smaller platforms that are more focused on the project size or the project level of principles, because they have developed their own internal quality principles for acceptance or rejection. But I thought it was useful because then the other ones like ICROA or the CCQI, which is the Carbon Credit Quality Initiative, those are standards that are working more at the program level. So sometimes the things that they request are more for the program and not so much for the methodology or for the credit class level. So I think it was useful to compile all of this. You can filter, you can then filter by the aspect. So within this table, this tab, you would have something about the duration of the credit period, or ex-ante credits eligible, or something of, if you want to filter by leakage, well, then you just put everything else out and you get only leakage information. And so there you are. And you can see what the core carbon principles from the International Council for Voluntary Carbon Markets is requesting, or just ICROA or whatever. So this is how it works. And in order to make it more fun, what I did is I customized ChatGPT. So you can also include here the protocol or the method that you're writing and all the information that's related to that. And you can get into, I want to check my project's compliance. So you put all the information of a project or something, and it's fed with all the information from the table. So you can start asking questions to the ChatGPT in terms of compliance in additionality, or what's missing, or what are the things that you want to dig further, or what are the improvements that you can do. And you can do the same with I want to dig more, and just use it for exploring the table from a different way. So let's say you want to explore about tracking, you just go to number 3, and it will give you a summary of what the ICROA says about registry management and the accessibility or the CCQI or whatever. So yeah, I hope you find this useful. This is a beta ChatGPT we are exploring with these tools. So any feedback, just reach out to me or to the science team through email or through any of our media and comment and let me know if there are any improvements or suggestions. So that would be on this side of things. Then the other thing that I wanted to share was that, let me stop sharing my screen. Where is this? Stop sharing. Okay. The other thing is that you know, we created our in-house Carbon Plus methodology, and it has gone through expert peer review and public comment, and it's up to date. And we are now exploring or looking for monitors and verifiers. So we posted in LinkedIn, and I'm going to send now the links. We posted all the requisites that a group of people, let's say an organization or a scientist that has reputation can, you know, try to apply for and become a monitor in our system. And maybe not only for this one, but we have also some other methodologies that are requiring more and more that there are verifiers. Some of those require more like certification, etc. And for the Carbon Plus, we don't require a lot of things, but expertise. That's the main thing, and a little bit of knowledge on GIS. And so yeah, you can look into the requisites, and if you know of someone or you are interested, you can apply for it. So yeah, I'm going to pause now and send the links. Any questions?
Where did you say that you published the requirements for those?
That's in LinkedIn. Let me share the link. Yeah. So this is the LinkedIn. Yeah, that's the LinkedIn post, and then here you have the other links to the chat GPT and to the table of voluntary carbon markets and integrity stamps. For the chat GPT, I believe, I tested with my husband today. We believe you don't need to have a particular team's chat GPT or anything, but you need to be logged in. If you don't log in, you cannot access.
Well, thank you for walking us through that, Giselle, and sharing the links. We're joined by Gabe here today, and I think Gabe is going to give us a little presentation, and then maybe after that we'll figure out what breakout rooms we want to have and spin those up. So yeah, Gabe, do you want to introduce yourself and what you'll be sharing about here?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Will, and thanks, Giselle. That seems like a really cool chat GPT tool, kind of a interactive way to start to kind of dig into some of those principles and maybe even like ask it for advice. So can definitely see that being useful. I think a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is going to be kind of in a way related to those principles and also just kind of like a novice's approach to getting into this space. I started with Kulshan Carbon Trust back in January of 2022. I was brought on as an intern in my senior year in my undergrad degree. And I've been working with them for the past 2.5 years to kind of get these biochar carbon credits, or eco credits, I should really say, off the ground. So I do have a couple of slides. If it's good with the Regen folks, I can present them, but wanted to give that kind of brief background before I jumped in there.
Yeah, that would be great.
Excellent. you guys seeing the screen there?
Yep.
Excellent. So Rebecca kind of gave me a nice tagline here, the woes and wins of methodology development. So I figured I'd run with that. Before I jump into kind of what that process has been for us, I figured I'd talk a little bit about KC. Our vision is people working together to draw down carbon in ways that regenerate the land and build thriving communities. And the mission is to
Maybe
conserve.
we lost Gabe there for a moment.
Oh, shoot.
Okay, now we're
Okay,
back with you.
Oh, excellent. I'm not sure where I cut out, but
Just that you were going to introduce KCT.
Oh, perfect. So yeah, I think the vision and mission should be there on the screen, but really we're looking to conserve and sequester carbon through collaborative natural climate solutions in our service territory, which is Northwest Washington State in the United States. So where this project began was with what we call our biochar pilot project, through kind of some collaborative work groups, which was us kind of reaching out to the community to learn more about different activities that are happening in our community. We landed on a project that looked at kind of 3 different pilot studies within biochar, and it was all focused on production. So we were looking at producing biochar through forestry slash piles. The Northwest Washington has a really large timber and logging scene, so there's a lot of that kind of activity around us. We also were looking at fuel reduction work, so activities where people are going out into the forest to collect the debris that's accumulating on the forest floor, and that's usually done to reduce the intensity of wildfire, and making biochar with that. And then the third one was construction and demolition waste, so using clean wood waste from construction and demolition to produce biochar. And here are some pictures of a couple of those different activities. Right in the middle of the screen, you can see these. This is a low-tech biochar kiln. And that's when it's kind of full of biochar and open after you've kind of started the quenching process of putting out the flames. To the right, you can kind of see as it's filled up and kind of actively burning and producing biochar. And then the 3 pictures on the bottom are of the first 2 points. So these smaller hand-built fuel reduction work piles. You can see that on the far left, this is like a much smaller pile. It's much easier to put out, and actually it uses a lot less water. So in the middle, you can see somebody's just using like a hand pump to spray a little bit of water as another person's raking it out to put out the flames there. And then the last picture to the far right corner at the bottom is one of these forestry slash piles, which burn a lot less efficient and is definitely an area that we've learned a lot about. So the process, we tried to take a really collaborative process so we could learn a lot, again, kind of from the community. The methodology development really comprised bringing different stakeholders together in what we called like a valorization work group. So we had members of the R&D team, as well as a couple of other folks that we had kind of identified either in our community or outside our community that might be able to give us some insights into the process. And from there, we basically figured out that in order to kind of issue credits for the projects that we were looking at. Oh, did I lose you guys?
Yep, so good.
Uh,
Yeah, maybe someone needs to mute.
I've been able to hear him. I don't know if anybody else is having trouble.
No. Yeah, I think we were just getting background noise from someone else.
No worries. Yeah, so basically we kind of figured out that we needed to kind of put together an appendix to the methodology that we were using. It was a Vera methodology in order to apply the biochar in the way that we felt was scientifically rigorous, but not actually supported by the methodology. So that was, kind of a learning process for us, and definitely involved some rigor and some time. So after putting that together and sending it through internal review and expert peer review, we were able to publish that on the Regen Registry, which I think we feel really good about. And so that's kind of the part that's done. The project plan, monitoring report, and the project page and story are all kind of still in the works because of kind of what I'll get into next. But essentially, we're hoping to be submitting all at least the project plan and the monitoring report in just the next few weeks here. So very exciting that we're kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. But yeah, so on the methodology side, I think that's kind of a good synopsis. On the project implementation, we again kind of had like a work group bringing in land stewards and other kind of business leaders in our community to kind of understand, again, how to make this project actually come together, who's going to actually do the work and build those relationships and partnerships. And I think that was, in a way, a little bit more straightforward than the methodology development, which I think was just kind of has a lot of nuance. Getting people out in the forest to burn waste wood is surprisingly easy, I guess I should say, as long as you're talking to the right people. So that was successful. And that process also involved kind of talking to people about who would normally do an activity a certain way, kind of modifying that activity to either produce biochar or kind of optimize for biochar. And the last part of that was then the kind of monitoring, reporting, and verification. So collecting the right measurements that will enable us to kind of prove or certify that these activities occurred. So that was the process. Now I can kind of jump into like what we've learned. And like I said, we started this process back in January or February of 2022. So it's been a long time coming. But I do think that we've got some really kind of key insights from the process. And like I said, I think we're just about there in terms of kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So it's very, very exciting. But to kind of jump into the methodology side of things, I think the big thing that we learned is just that verification is, very cost prohibitive. And what I mean by that is that, at the scale that we were operating at, which was, looking at, I think at the beginning, we were kind of shooting for 150 tons of CO2 equivalent sequestered. And so, roughly 150 credits, even at that scale, actually kind of going through the verification was going to take a significant chunk of the funds that would be made available from the credit issuance, just to kind of go through that verification process. When we kind of got down to actually crunching the numbers, the amount that we sequestered, we found was much lower than that, closer to 30 to 50 tons of CO2e. And at that point, the verification just completely swallows the any kind of returns that the credits would have. So I think that was a really big learning for us, and it's something that we're thinking a lot about. It's like, how can we kind of do more of like a distributed open source, take a more open source approach, because I think that the traditional kind of verification scheme is much more focused on large operations that are producing thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of credits on massive swaths of land. And I guess part of the goal of our project was to kind of lower the barrier to entry for small scale folks. So I think, you know, just to kind of move on, you know, the documentation I think was very time consuming. I don't think that we would have been able to actually get to this point without the help of the Regen Foundation. We were part of the endowment program, and you know, we've been able to kind of continue the process through the kind of continued support that the initial endowment grant has provided us. So that's been, you know, really instrumental because I think, just like I said, I think the process has taken a lot longer than we originally expected. And then, you know, I think the last one, metrics depend on measurements. I can, you know, maybe that isn't very telling, but I can kind of jump into it in that we started the process by making some assumptions about the way that we could collect data, in that, you know, we would, rather than actually kind of getting the mass of the biochar that we were producing, we were hoping to use a National Forest Service calculator that would basically turn the volume of a pile, you know, we could look at the pile, measure it, and then turn that into an estimated mass and use that to kind of derive the mass of the biochar. Our verifier, who we ended up talking to, but not actually going through the whole verification process with, you know, basically told us that they didn't see that as a valid way to be coming up with that number. And so we ended up revising. And I think that the way that we ended up going is a much more rigorous and kind of robust way of estimating this biochar mass. But I think that process of kind of taking one way to kind of get to a particular, you know, an important metric for a methodology, and then kind of realizing that the way that we're going about it isn't as rigorous as it should be, definitely took a lot of time and energy that, you know, could have been avoided. So yeah, I think just thinking about how the different ways that you take or that you come up with a metric could be really important, even if it's all kind of leading to the same result. And then I guess on the biochar implementation side, there's, you know, I can kind of get into some of the nuts and bolts, and I don't know, you know, how relevant the you know, biochar specifics will be for the audience here, but you know, I can just kind of run through it. And I think the big thing is like these slash piles that are not built to produce biochar are really not optimized for biochar. And what I mean by that is the traditional slash pile that forestry operations build is very big. It's full of dirt, and it has a really wide range of material sizes. So we have like really small twigs mixed with like massive stumps. And basically what that means is it doesn't produce biochar very well when you light them on fire, because the small stuff burns up really fast and the large stuff is still smoldering at the end of the process. And on that, I guess the one other thing is they take a lot of water to put out. We actually ended up having, you know, some of our tests, again, where these piles would normally just be burned, we were coming in and trying to put them out so we could kind of save the charcoal and produce biochar
again.
Oh, shoot. Does it seem like I'm back, Will?
Well, I think it might be on your side. It's been fine for me. I'm not sure about other people.
Yeah, it's been totally fine for me.
I can hear you loud and clear as well. I think it might be on Will's side.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but it looks like we lost Gabe there.
Oh, not sure what's going on. Hopefully I'm coming in.
It's all good, Gabe.
You're loud and clear.
Okay, excellent. anyway, I can just kind of speed through this. I know I probably have already taken more time than was allotted, but I guess I'd say that if you guys have any questions about producing biochar in a low tech way, so not using a kind of commercial facility, or interested in that, please feel free to reach out to us at Kulshan. I think we've learned a lot and would be happy to pass some of that learning on. I guess the one other thing I'll mention here on this slide is just this market for local credits. One of the things that we've started to realize or identify is just that these kind of larger voluntary carbon market is really focused on reputability, and I think rightfully so, as obviously we all know there's been some questions surrounding that. Where I think there's a little bit more flexibility is in these kind of local markets, is what we're calling them. And in our region, there's a lot of smaller organizations and companies that are trying to do right by purchasing carbon credits, but they're not really sure like where to go for those. And so our hope is that we can take, again, kind of like a more distributed approach to verification and be measuring down to 99% rather than like 99.999, and that those kind of methods are going to be less costly, and also are kind of less important or relevant for the customers that we're looking to serve. So again, I think those local professionals, local markets are less concerned about the reputability and really just interested in doing good for the community. And yeah, I have a final thoughts. I might have kind of already gone through this in the last kind of section there. But yeah, the low tech credits, I think really are only going to be profitable if we can recognize the co-benefits of biochar. Biochar has so many amazing co-benefits, and the process of producing biochar in a low-tech way takes a lot of time. And so if we can increase the value of those credits by recognizing the co-benefits, I think that we can see that as a profitable model. But until that, I think we're just right on the edge of breaking even. I mentioned the local markets kind of avoid some of the uncertainties that exist within the larger voluntary market space. And then, yeah, the decentralized peer verification will be really helpful for reducing the barriers to entry. And then I guess lastly, just one other kind of area that we've been looking at is a sponsorship model where organizations could kind of pay to help with project activities, and then we could just send credits their way as they're generated. So rather than an organization paying for a certain number of credits, they could just be sponsoring a project, and then the credits that are produced could be sent their way. And I think that helps kind of reduce the tension between kind of additionality, or the additionality tension, where we should really be seeing that the payment for the credits are inducing the activities, and at the scale that we're at, we just don't quite see that yet. So yeah, I think that was my last slide. Sorry to go on a little long there, and hopefully it kind of came through well for everyone. I'm happy to take questions, or feel free to reach out to me at the email or phone number that's provided on the screen.
Thanks, Gabe. Yeah. It's quite the journey you guys have been on here. Yeah, anyone here have any questions for Gabe?
I wanted to ask you, how much biochar do you produce, like in terms of weight?
Yeah, so basically, I mentioned that we had kind of 3 different pilots, one with the forestry slash, one with the hand-built piles, and then the construction and demolition waste. And basically what we found is that although we did those activities, we didn't collect the right data for two of them. So the forestry slash and the construction and demolition. And so we ended up just tossing those to the side and really focusing on valorizing the hand-built piles. And with that, over 2 seasons, the conservation crews out in the San Juan Islands built and burned about 860 piles. They're about 4 feet by 4 feet, a little over a meter both way, if you can kind of visualize that. And that ended up yielding about 28 tons of CO2. So we're looking at valorizing in right around that range, or issuing, I should say.
Well, on that, how did the community got rewarded, or how is the reward system mechanism around the participation? Because you were mentioning the local market, and yeah, for me, I mean, that's like very fundamental, right? Like local market to be activated, and then we can think even in issuing other things. How did I go?
Yeah, I just put my contact information in the chat in case anybody wants to send me an email. But yeah, I think that, for us, there was kind of 2 sides of that. One was, as you probably heard, we brought together this kind of group of stakeholders to kind of inform the process. And we weren't able to compensate those people, but we'd like to think that, what we're doing as a nonprofit organization in our space will be able to support their work going forward. So there was no compensation for the work group participation, but we were able to send a portion, or we've actually already sent some funds over to the island conservation crews who were actually out there building the piles. And the funds that we were able to send were roughly 40% of the funding that we are going to make through selling these credits. So it wasn't the majority, but we'd like to think that in the future that number is going to be much closer to like 80 or 90%. It's just through this pilot there was only kind of so much left, and as I said, it definitely took a lot longer than expected. But the hope is that, that's enabling them to continue the work that they're doing. And again, in the future, once the documentation is there and it's more just about kind of collecting the data, that we're doing a lot less work, and we're able to just kind of pass a lot more of those funds along to them. Well, like I said, if anybody else has questions, feel free to contact me. Thanks for the opportunity to present, and yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much, Gabe. Well, I guess at this point, why don't we establish what groups we'd like to be in here? Yeah, so I know, Suma, you've said that you can host a room. Do you want to just say a few words about what you're working on?
Yes, Will. So we have been working on a practice-based eco-credit methodology from GVK and Radis in the Netherlands. So we wanted to use the opportunity of today's meeting to discuss, as Giselle put, to discuss about additionality and what sort of, because we are trying to define it in a way, and we would like to get some feedback on what more needs to be incorporated in that definition, and how it can be made suitable for the practice-based methodology that we are approaching for. So we are developing these methodologies to incentivize farmers who are basically adopting regenerative agricultural practices to produce cotton in India. So yeah, there are a few practices that they adopt, and based on these, we are trying to generate the idea is to generate eco credits, um, per acre that they farm on. And the second thing that, yeah, we were aiming to discuss was the credit class calculations. So how do we basically approach that? Like, what kind of eco credit, uh, and how would we calculate this eco credit as, right, based on the scoring system, or there are certain approaches that we have. So we thought, yeah, it would be nice to get some feedback around that. And yeah, if time permits, then just a quick run through on the overall methodology in terms of how it looks like. But yeah, these are the uh, two more important things that we were aiming to discuss today.
Thank you, Suma. Is there anyone else here that would also like to host a room, or other questions that people are bringing today? Because the other option is that we just all are in here with Suma focused on these specific questions, but I just want to make sure there's the space if someone else has some questions they'd like to work through, and we can set up a breakout room for that. Looks like you're considering, Arturo.
Well, sorry again. If we all stay here, I guess we can also open a little bit for, comments or questions that emerge for others as well. So yeah, maybe it's a good opportunity to talk about all this. Reviews, integrity, a little bit of, yeah, additionality specifics and so.
Okay, well, yeah, since I'm not hearing anyone else who would like to host a room, why don't we just all stay in here together, and yeah, either if people have responses to the things that Suma's already raised, or Suma, if you want to provide additional context on what you're thinking through here.
Yeah, maybe I can share my screen where the document is. Maybe that will be helpful in just looking at what we have already written.
Yeah.
Let me just share the screen. Yeah. Is everyone able to see the screen?
Yep.
See the document?
Yes.
Cool. Um, so yeah, as I mentioned, like very briefly, the context of this methodology, which is, yeah, basically to incentivize, the farmers who are adopting the regenerative practices with GVK in India. So GVK already, so the farmers that are enrolled in these practices, they are already being certified by these two organizations called Regen Agri and NPOP. So they receive the regenerative organic cotton certification. So that is already something that we can, base the credit on. And as Gabe was talking about the sponsorship model, we actually have an example of really good example of that as well, which we call as an acre contribution, which is targeted to the the buyer, the consumer, consuming companies, like who are buying the uh, produce. They are also responsible to pay for all the support that is required on field to help the farmers transition or enroll into the regenerative program of RADI/GVK. So that is pretty much the context of this methodology, and this is a practice-based methodology. So yeah, here the focus is more on, incentivizing based on the practices being implemented, and not really looking at maybe how much carbon has been sequestered, right? So in that case, yeah, I'll just is it okay if I just start with the additionality? uh, like, am I already clear with the context, or are there any questions?
Go ahead with additionality then.
Yeah. So for now we have defined additionality as basically, yeah, that the participants must be proving a change in practice from the business as usual scenario, which is basically using GMO seeds to produce cotton to begin with, and yeah, maybe using a lot of uh, uh, synthetic chemical inputs, which is fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides. So we are defining additionality based on um the fact that if they can prove a change in practice, then it is an additional situation. And we are considering the starting point to be, when these farmers decide to get enrolled in the RADIS/JVK regenerative agriculture program. Now here, yeah, there are a couple of questions, and I would love to hear if any of you have feedback regarding this. Uh, so first is that, um, yeah, as far as we see in the voluntary carbon market definitions, additionality is very much related to proving the financial, gain or incentive um, part, in the sense that, farmers wouldn't have opted for this project if there was no financial incentive, or this is the, financial element that is prompting farmers to shift. Is it really necessary to bring this financial barrier when we are trying to define additionality? Or is it okay if we tweak and we are basically basing it on changing of business as usual scenario in terms of implementation of practices? And the second question would be here that, in case if the farmers are already enrolled in the program, for say in the last 3 years or in the last 5 years, can those farmers also be a part of this credit system? If anyone has any opinion or guidance on this, that'll be great.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is ecology, like how ecological something is, because you can have like carbon credits out of monoculture and it's detrimental for the local species. For example, in the quantitative indicators, maybe there are more underneath. Maybe you can scroll a little bit down so we can have
Yeah, sure.
like the whole.
Uh,
Yeah, for me, will be like the quantitative, maybe also to see how many native species there are, what's the integration with the forest, where like how many exotic species are in the place and how to integrate that within their larger ecosystem. Yeah, I'm an ecologist, so the first thing that comes to my mind is like that baseline in on the ecological side of things, and how is that process also adding value to the additionality, because you can have a lot of carbon absorption and you can have a desert right there. So it's like, is the additionality uh, something more holistic? More questions than answers.
Thanks a lot, Arturo. Yeah, no, I totally agree with your point, and we do have quantitative metrics that are looking at, the percentage of area that is under either intercropping, which is basically trying out native species because that region is known for millets, which is now considered to be superfood and really spreading across the Indian markets. And yeah, so they are the native species. So you know how farmers are adopting that, and also because these are tribal communities, so they are very much close to forests in terms of a lot of resource provisioning. So how they are involved in that. So there are we have defined a few metrics around those to measure and yeah, collect the data for sure. So that is yeah, we must definitely include that. I totally agree. Yeah, but the question here is, yeah, I think uh from a very technical methodology writing point of view, I just wanted to understand if defining additionality on these few factors is enough, or does it have to have financial barrier element into it? So that was, yeah, that is a confusion. Just wanted to confirm if how it works.
The way we thought originally about financial additionality was that it was kind of against what the land stewards that have been doing good practices for a long time would get rewarded for that, or would be benefit. Like the projects, if there's a financial additionality, you cannot go back in time or reward the projects that have already started or have happening before. So it goes a little bit against to what we believe in Regen. It's the support to small stakeholders or to the people that have been doing good things for a long time, and we were trying to do something that was more open. So we don't request that there's financial additionality in our projects, but we make that very clear in the way we marketize it, because there are some standards, and you will see that in the table, like the ICROA or the International Council of the Voluntary Carbon Markets Core Carbon Principles. So long. That's why they use acronyms. They request a financial additionality in most of the programs. And so it is becoming like a standard in the market, but in most cases it's unfeasible. Yeah, I personally, I don't agree with that. I think that it's more important the business as usual demonstration or the barriers analysis, if so, than the financial, because you can always like, let's go to an extreme. You can put all your money and even become poor because you feel you need to do it for the project, and it does not exactly mean that you are that you had a lot of money to do it in the first place, or it was not costly. I don't see the logic behind that. Which is not the same as saying that the project would have happened anyways, because sometimes the barriers are not financial. And so I think here what you need to demonstrate is that the project wouldn't have happened with business as usual management, or without this organization taking place, or without this community doing the job. The things would not have been the same. And that's what you need to demonstrate from my point of view. So yeah, it's a little bit of, I'm not giving maybe a very clear answer here, because we are navigating that as well, and the market is increasingly pitching that you need financial additionality.
Yeah.
But it's always coming from the same corporations, and I feel it has not been deeply thought of what you're leaving out. That's my perspective. So in Regen, we don't require that, but we require transparency of how you are addressing the additionality, and that is going to show up in your project pages and in the marketplace.
Got it, Giselle. Thanks a lot, Giselle. No, I totally, I totally agree with you as well. That's the same perspective I also share. Because yeah, as in the whole financial barrier aspect makes the scope of the projects very narrow, and even the point of entry becomes very difficult for a lot of especially smallholder farmers. So and I agree that it it should not be one of the most important aspects to be considered as additionality uh, factor. So Giselle, from what you said, there is one more there is a follow-up question on that then. That so the thing is that our regenerative agricultural program, it basically starts with providing non-GMO seeds to farmers, right? And the farmers will not have had access to non-GMO seeds if they wouldn't have been enrolled in this program by Radis or Radis/GVK. So in that scenario, can that be used as a um, you know
Totally, yes.
additionality
Yes,
establishing factor?
yes, because the project would have not happened without the program, or however you want to call it. Yes,
Got it.
we
That's
need to
great to
find a
hear.
way to clearly state that. Yes, which
Got
at
it.
certain point comes from, a little bit of funding from that program happened originally so that the seats were provided, right? So maybe
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe there's, a way to, tie that to finance a little bit. I don't
Got
know,
it. Got it.
how, but, it's resources are coming from the program in the first place.
Yeah. And in terms of because in general this whole concept of GMO non-GMO seeds turns out to be pretty questionable or controversial, can get. So when we are um, trying to state something of this sort in a methodology, I was just wondering that is it a good idea to specify that, okay, you know what, 10% can have, say, contamination, or 20% can have contamination, but uh, yeah, because it can happen that it's not 100% you know pure non-GMO, so there might be chances of contamination. If that is the case, should it that be specified in a methodology?
I don't know what other things.
The context around this, oh sorry, the context around this is that even if we buy non-GMO seeds, as you might know, in India that is getting more and more difficult because of the cross-pollination. So there are very few sites available where you can grow cotton non-GMO and not have anything coming in through pollen from the BT fields around. So of course, if you do organic, it's very clear. It's either 0 or it's 5%, and 0 is considered as 0 and 5% is considered as a GMO. But in reality, if you look at indeed, contamination might get up to maybe 10%, where it's clear that actually all your efforts were towards 0% GMO, but at some point you cannot have it 100% pure anymore. Just how we are breeding these seeds. So then indeed the question is to build in a kind of threshold where you say from this level it's not contamination anymore, it's actually on purpose. And from this level, you are still in that range of you did everything you could to supply 100% GMO free, but there are limitations to the possibilities, especially in the context of India.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I would put that very specific, I guess, in the methodology. It could also leave at some point in the current class, but I guess not. I guess it's more like a methodological specification of what is the margin of error, I would say. Some sort of, along those lines.
Yeah. It's more like an error margin indeed. Yeah.
Or tolerance. Tolerance is a word. Mhm. And then Suma, I wanted to also add in terms of the quantitative indicators or qualitative, I don't know where to put this, but there are also some very cheap how do you say that? Community scientist tools that are good for tracking birds and insects, like eBird, and there are a couple more. And those are just apps that people download from the phone. And whenever they are in the field, if they see a certain bird, they just take a picture and it gets geolocated and you start tracking, right? And so for the different fields, you can have your own assessment of what are the number of birds and how, in time you can see if the birds are declining for your area or increasing. You can see the same for insects, and I believe there are certain apps that are similar for plants. So that could be an option. Like oh, I forgot the name. What's that? It's not community science. It's Ned, what's the name for that? Do you recall?
Citizen science?
Right. Okay. Yeah. In this case, it's more like community, like city. Or citizen one.
That would be pretty cool, actually, Giselle. Thanks for sharing that. I would look into it because, yeah, and then it'll just be a good data repository, and over time, as you said, we can track the improvement in the biodiversity, and
Yeah,
yeah,
like
as per the
it's a very low cost, and it can also help adding more color to the assessment.
yeah, absolutely, it's an important benefit that we can always uh, look into for sure. uh yeah Sana, should I go ahead with credit class calculation, or do you have anything to add for additionality?
Yeah, no, I think the credit class calculation could be interesting to also get
Yeah,
some feedback
yeah,
on. Yeah.
yeah. Thanks a lot, Sana. So yeah, the next area is the credit class calculation. So yeah, we were basically, trying to wrap our heads around how to define um, eco credit in this scenario. So we came up with three approaches, and I would quickly uh, yeah, give what we mean by those three approaches, and maybe you all can share what you think about it. So the first approach is basically where uh, the farmers are the moment the farmers are enrolled in the program, they are entitled to one credit, which is equivalent to 1 acre of their farm. So if the farmer is being enrolled with 4 acres within the GVK, that is regenerative program, then the farmer will be entitled to 4 credits per year. So this is basically a very simple approach, because once the farmer is enrolled, the farmer is certified regenerative organic, and there are systems and data in place which is which comes with strong evidence of proving that in yeah, with the certifications. So, but here, the challenge is that there are farmers who join the program, but maybe they do not join it with 1 acre, but they join maybe only with half an acre. So, will they be awarded half an eco credit or zero? So that can become tricky. and also the fact that if we are using this approach, then what we thought is that there is a cap, right? Like the farmer, per acre, the farmer is only entitled to 1 eco credit. But what if the farmers, say farmer A is approaching this with two improved agricultural practices, whereas farmer B deploys four of the regenerative agricultural practices. So then how do we basically differentiate this, and how do we incentivize accordingly? Because ultimately the focus is on encouraging farmers to implement more and more regenerative practices on their farms. So this is the first approach, where the farmers basically, the moment they are enrolled, they are entitled to 1 eco credit per acre. Now the second approach is that per acre, there can be number of eco credits, and this number can be basically calculated based on the scoring system. So basically, every practice that the farmer has implemented, or the set of practices that we define under the regenerative program, we have scores for each practices based on some metrics, and you know whatever the farmer has implemented, based on that the farmer would receive the score, and based on the overall score per acre per year, number of eco credits will be calculated. So here, this seems a bit more holistic, in the sense that it covers the aspect of, uh, no matter what the size of the farm would be, the eco credits can be assigned. Similarly, the it can also differentiate, incentivize farmers more who have implemented more practices, and that can basically pave way for other farmers to feel motivated and encouraged. And yeah, and the third approach is basically, this is a very black and white approach. It is either the farmer, if the farmer is putting the practice, then yes, the farmer is entitled to an eco credit, and otherwise nothing. In the difference between this and the first approach is, I think, yeah, even if the farmer comes with, say, half an acre, then maybe we can award half a credit. But these are the three very simplistic definitions of three approaches that we could think of. Just wanted to hear your thoughts on what you feel, which approach seems more suitable for this context, or seems like, yeah, it does justice to the whole concept of eco credit. Sana, please add if I have missed something.
Yeah, I think you told it right. Our struggle. Yeah. And indeed, to give us a background, like Suma told, we have the eco contribution approach, where there is support per acre base. So I think our original approach was to look at it maybe in the first approach, but indeed it doesn't give any differentiation between farmers who are doing maybe just the minimum, or farmers who start to do all kinds of extra on top practices, which is actually something we would like to incentivize, and of course also find a good reward for.
I think that's a good point when it comes to the cost benefit of being like very precise in the way you quantify and measure how's the performance per acre of the farmers, how good you are at getting that information, or otherwise, as you're saying, you just have like a checklist, and above a certain minimum of checkboxes, it's approved per acre, and then, the acre becomes approved. I don't know, something along those lines. So it could be binary, or it could be more like a weighted acre, which is, I think, what you're thinking in the second option. That depends on the level of detail, or yeah, the information that you can gather with certain precision. The way I would kind of make a decision here usually is I create my spreadsheet. I have fake numbers for a number of farms and acres, or let's say I focus on one project, and I create, 1, 2, and 3, maybe 3 different scenarios where the farm performs excellent, or when there are some scores that are somehow not really great and minimum. And within those 3 scenarios, I test what happens with the final number of credits I get with one approach, the second one, and the third one. And then I see if it's fair, and if which option represents the best that you want to kind of accomplish. What's the, as you were saying, what's the type of performance that you want to reward, maybe over the other one, or maybe you see there's not so much difference at the end in the numbers, and so maybe it does not require so much, gathering of data, etc., beyond the binary, and you counterbalance, costs versus results, and see what's the difference in the final numbers. If it's minimum, maybe it's not worth the work of doing the second approach. Otherwise, if it feels like super, off, then you can refine. I would play around with simulation. Just a simple spreadsheet, and with the quantification for a project. It's maybe a 2 hours exercise, and you can play around all together, and you get it into an answer.
Yeah, very good idea. Yeah, and also what you mentioned, also really looking at the cost, how to call it, the cost benefit ratio, which of course the more complex you make it, the costlier it becomes to track this. Of course, there's a whole extension team on the ground, also in the context of certification and internal inspections, etc. But anything that you add, of course, will be an additional effort that somebody has to take, and then whether or not that really really covers it at the end, or reflects at the end. So yeah, I think it's very good input to make that worksheet exercise. Yeah.
Yeah, we can always use the power of historical data for the simulation, which can be a good start, I guess.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so I think we are good with the credit class calculation as well. If anyone else has any other feedback or thought, please share it with us.
I will need to run into another call, but
Okay.
this has been great. See you in the next one, okay? And I'll follow up with the review, and yeah, if people want to reach out because of the whatever feedback from the integrity principles that I shared, and there's research or the search for monitors and verifiers, or comments, like Kulshan Carbon Trust shared today, about not being able to find enough monitors or cheap enough or whatever, all the ideas and contributions, as we are facing the same thing with the Carbon Plus. And so ideas welcome, and thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Giselle.
Yeah, thanks, Giselle. And Suma and Sane, thanks so much for taking the time to dig in here and sharing what you guys are in the middle of. Any last thoughts before we close the call here?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, Will, so Tika had asked the question in the chat, I think. So there is a little bit of more work that needs to be done, definitely in terms of writing in the document. So we'll just, finish that. And once that is, the document is a little bit in a better shape, we'll definitely share it in Hilo space and receive more, as many feedbacks as possible, because that will be a great space too.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Well, thanks everyone for joining our lab today, and I guess we'll wrap up here.
Yeah, super. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Thanks
Yes,
for hosting.
thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Yeah.